the geology of the flood, and we discussed the flood in very, very detailed in chapters 7 and 8 in Genesis. I think we are now clear about what happened from day 1 till day 371. Any questions about this section before we go into the ark? Right. Can I ask you a question then? For how long the water covered the earth? Any answer?
371 days.
371 days, that is the length of the flood, but the water increased for 150 days. The first 40 days is rain, and then the ark was lifted up from the ground, and it kept floating for, the water increased till 150 days, and then it receded and it landed in the 10th month on the day 17th. Remember that in chapter 8, yeah? Right, that's very good. Right, what are the sources of water in the flood? Any answer? From where the water came?
From the fountain from the above, from the fall from the above, and the fountain from the under.
Below, right. Fountain of the deep, which is subterranean water through the lots of volcanic eruptions, and that caused breaking of the crust of the earth, and a massive amount of water coming from below, and the gates of heaven were opened as well. That's fine, right? And the flood affected the geology of the earth, affected the fossilization, affected lots of things that we see nowadays. The geologists who are uniformitarian, that means the same rate of change has never changed according to them, refuse the flood completely. Now, after we understood the flood, we need to start talking about the ark because the purpose of the ark is to keep all this representative of God's creation safe for these 371 days, as Linda said, and to come out and populate the earth again after the end of the flood. So the ark, can anybody remember the dimensions of the ark? I'll show you the dimensions now. Sorry. The dimensions are 300 cubits, that's the length of the ark, and 50 cubits, that's the width of the ark, and the height of the ark is 30 cubit. And the cubit is about half a meter. It is about 46 centimeters, 46 to 48 centimeters, yeah. So it was just roughly half a meter. So it was very wide, and lots of people start to ask, can Noah build this big ship? Yes, there is enough technology. The early man was very, very clever. We read in Genesis chapter 4 that the descendants of Cain built a city, and they had a musical industry, and they were able to raise sheep and herds, and they worked with the alloys. Alloys are metal of iron and brass, and in order to separate them, it needs really very clever technology. So the early man was strong enough, was intelligent enough. The other question, can 8 people build the ark? The answer is, the Bible doesn't say that only the 8 people who built the ark, because Noah could have employed carpenters, can employ joiners, can employ other people to help him. Like they are not believers, but they are working in a project. Like you can get somebody to repair something in your house who is not a believer. So the ark was so wide, and the ratio between the length of the ark and the width of the ark is 1:6. And this is the same ratio that's used in the cargo ships nowadays. The ark didn't have a machine to direct it. It's not like a cruise ship. It was just floating. It was built on solid ground. It was not built on the river or in the sea, but it was built on solid ground. And when the water increased after 40 days of the rain, they started to increase the ark above the level of the earth. Now, the Bible says that the mountains were covered about 15 cubit. That is the half of the length of the height of the ark was already immersed under water when they started to sail. I'd like you to notice at the top of the ark, the Lord said, you will have a window. And this is the window I'm trying to highlight here. I hope you are all see this. And this is the window, which is 1 cubit. That's about half a meter. And it is there for aeration, for air, and for light. Because remember, they are staying 371 days. So they need to have some light, natural light, to be able to see and to count the days, the cycles of day and night. Right, so these are the dimensions of the ark. The wood of the ark is the gopher wood. And we don't know what is the gopher wood exactly is. And some people think that the gopher wood is like processing of the wood, like when you say laminate floor, right? So it is wood, either a natural wood or a processing. That's not an issue. The important thing really is the covering of the ark from inside and out with tar. And obviously, tar is the product of petroleum. And Noah didn't have factories to analyze petroleum, the oil, to make the crude oil to make petroleum and take the tar. But the word tar means also a sticky material like gum, which can be harbored from the trees. And it's an isolating material that's used outside and inside the ark, so no water can enter into the wall of the ark and sink the ark. The other thing is, the Lord said to Noah to build it on 3 stages, 3 floors. So there is a lower and middle and higher floor. And that increased the capacity of the ark massively. And the Lord asked him to make nests or cages for different animals and birds. And the model that was built in Cincinnati, in northern Kentucky, in Answers in Genesis, they have a model. It doesn't say, the Bible doesn't give the details of inside the ark. But this is a logical model which explains how they can accommodate all the animals, all the food that is needed, and also enough space for them to live. Okay? So that is the ark, as I said, and it can take 500 big trucks like this. So it is like 1.5 football pitch, 3-story high. So it's a massive building. And I will show you the opening ceremony in 2016 when they opened the ark, and I was there. And it is just, there was about 3,000 people, and they were able to go in and out, and there was enough space. So that is the model of the ark, as I said, in Cincinnati. And this is the window that I said. It is a continuous window like this. And there is only one door on the side of the ark. And the window was very important, and that's called the comb. And at the end of the flood, Noah lifted up this comb so they can see the tips of the mountains when the water receded. So the ark, as I said, is a massive, massive building. And this is a special lens. When you look at the ark, these are the big columns, as you can see here. Obviously, the ark here is, there is electricity, there is air conditioned, there are toilets, and it's a big exhibition. But Noah's Ark was not exactly like this. This is an exhibition. to explain how the ark would be designed. So massive wood like this. And Noah, the land before the flood was so fertile, and there was enough wood, and they have enough technology to cut this wood and to build all these massive things here in the ark. So there was one, that's the first floor you enter in, that's the middle, and that is the third floor. And as I said, massive columns of wood. So this is the ark. If you put it in a neighborhood like this is a football pitch, American football pitch. It's bigger than the pitch. And all this neighborhood, you can see massive number of houses that can be here. And this is the comb that I told you about. That is the window at the top. Obviously, I mentioned that before. Sometimes when we tell the story of the flood, we mention that to the kids as it's a little boat, and the giraffes are looking from the top, and the animals are jumping here and there, and Noah is not struggling to control them. That was not the biblical ark at all. And when we teach the children like this, we really destroy their faith, because a little bit of rain can turn that big ship, small ship, it can turn upside down, and you lose all the genetic material in this altogether. So this is a dangerous photo. And if we give this picture to the kids, we are really destroying their faith in the Bible. So they did a study called the Korean study in 1992, and they discussed the stability of the ark, the comfort of the creatures inside the ark, the strength of the ark against the wind. And they put computer models with 30 meters waves to check the stability, as I said, of the ark, the comfort and the strength of the ark. And they put different models. They put Gilgamesh model, which is a cube, and it is not really stable, and it will kill everybody inside it. They put the dimension that the Bible mentioned, 300 cubit by 50 by 30, and that gives the maximum comfort, the maximum stability, the maximum strength. Because big ships can be broken in the middle, but this 6-to-1 ratio is a stable ratio and still functioning till now. So this is the Korean study, and it proves that the Bible was, the dimensions in the Bible made sense. Right, what we have seen the purpose of the flood. Remember, the purpose of the flood is to kill all the humans who are outside the ark, to kill all the creeping animals and all the birds and the earth itself. These are the 4 purposes of the ark, of the flood. The purpose of the ark is to keep every kind that God created, to keep it safe. And then after the flood, some of them were extinct. So the fowls after their kind, the cattle after their kind, creeping things of the earth after this kind, 2 of every sort shall come unto thee to keep them alive. So Noah is not going to go away and find the animals and bring them over. The Lord will bring the animals to him. And the Lord have a control of his creatures and creation. Remember when the Lord asked Peter to go and fish for this fish from the sea, and he will find coins to cover the taxes, to cover Jesus and Peter himself. So the Lord have control on animals and birds and all his creatures. So the Lord sent the animals to Noah. Some people say, how Noah can get the kangaroo from Australia? There was no Australia because all the continents were together. That's number 1. Number 2, probably there was no kangaroo as such. It was the head of the family of kangaroo, which we don't know what it is actually. That's the one which entered the ark and then changed after the thing. So this is the word kind, which is very important word to understand. It's called min in Hebrew. And it's mentioned 10 times in chapter 1 in Genesis. And God created according, God created according to its kind. And this is a very important word, as we discussed in the previous lectures, because the word kind is the head of the family. So if there are no 200 types of dogs, God did not create 200 types of dogs in day 6 in creation. He created the wolf with the genetic pool to differentiate into 200 types of dogs. So I'll take you through this diagram. I hope you all can see this. Yeah. Right. Good. So I'll just go back. So this is the kingdom. This is the animal kingdom. We have the plant kingdom and animal kingdom. And then the phylum. What is the phylum? Is chordate and no chordate. That means there is a spinal cord and there is no spinal cord. And then the class. The class is the mammals. And then the order, carnivorous, if they eat they eat meat or they eat herbs. And then the family, and we think the kind, and then after that the genus, and then the species. That's the animals that we see with us now. But we think the kind is at the level of the family. That's called min. So this is the kind. So what God sent to Noah is the head of the family. As we said, he doesn't need to send any marine animals, no whales, no fish, nothing like this, because they live in water. But he will send the head of the family of the creeping creatures and of the birds, and obviously the 8 people who are human will enter into the ark at that level. Any question at this stage? Are you happy about the understanding of the family? Okay. Yeah. Osama, yeah?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Any question? No? Right. Okay. The depth of the flood. So the fountains of the great deep broken up and the windows of heaven were open. That's the source of water, as we discussed before. We read in chapter 7, verse 19 and 20, that the water prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. So the hills were covered by water. And then he said, 15 cubits upwards did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. And this is very important. That means it is a global flood. It covered all the earth. It is not just a localized flood in the Middle East. It is a very big flood that covered the whole earth. This is a very interesting photo because this is ahead of the mountain, and this is the water, 15 cubits, and this is the ark floating here. Obviously, the water cannot form a wall like this because the water takes its own level. So if the water goes above this area, it will seep into the valley and fill this area again. And in order to cover one mountain, you need to cover all of them. Because you remember, if you bring a tube and fill it with water and connect this tube to other tubes, the water will come down to find its own level. So you can't cover one mountain by 15 cubits without covering all mountains. And that's the evidence of a global flood. And that's very important really to understand. So this picture, obviously, we made that in the Photoshop, but it is not a reality. You cannot have a picture like this in real life. Right. Is there enough water to cover all of this? The answer is yes. This is a computer model. If you flatten all the earth, so there will be no mountains or hills, and there is no valleys, you make them all very smooth like this. There is 70% of the surface of the earth is water. So if you make it very smooth like this, you have 2 miles of water to cover the earth. So we have really enough water. All what we need is only about 6 meters, right? That's the 15 cubits. So there is enough water to cover all the earth really, because the water of the deep and the gates of heaven were opened. So there is enough water. Right, so what we want to concentrate upon, that Genesis 6-9 is historical account. It is not a myth or legend. That is very important to understand this. And Noah's flood was global. Noah's flood was catastrophic. That means it caused damage, it caused change of formation of mountains, because the tectonic plates hit each other and formed these big high mountains. So it is an important understanding of the idea of creation and how we can understand the world we live in by understanding Noah's flood. I would like to ask you a question, and we need to discuss that. Right. What is the evidence that Noah's flood was global flood, not a local flood? Anyone? If somebody said to you, Noah's flood was local, not a universal flood, what's your answer? I'm waiting.
Of the hills for only one region, so it has to
Yes,
be all over the world.
absolutely. And the Bible is very clear that it covered the high hills by 15 cubits, right? That's number one. Number two, any other argument? Have you thought of the purpose of the flood? The purpose of the flood is to kill everybody outside the ark. That's right. If the flood was local, there is no need to build the ark, because God could have asked Noah and his family to travel to the area where there is no flood, and after the flood finishes, they can come back and return to the Middle East. So in order to be a universal flood and to build the ark, that means it is a global flood. Number three, we haven't studied that yet, but we'll study that later. In the covenant that God made after the flood, he said, I'm not going to flood the whole earth again with water. But now we have local floods in Bangladesh and other places. So if God keeps his covenant and say there is no more floods, he means it's no universal flood, but there can be a local flood from time to time. You see the point? So we have at least 3 answers to the global flood. Because God asked Noah to build an ark, because there is no need for an ark if it is a local flood. Number 2, as Riyad was saying, in order to cover one mountain, you need to cover all the mountains. Number 3, the purpose of the flood is to kill everybody which outside the ark. And if it is a local flood, people could fled to another area. Number 4, the covenant of God with Noah is not to flood the whole universe again with water, but we find floods, a local flood from time to time. Okay? Any questions about this? Good. Source and action. Let us see this little video just to give an impression about the flood. right? Obviously, this is just a flavor of the flood. Obviously, this is not exactly what had happened. But what we're trying to say here is people were going about their life as normal. And then the flood hit them as immediately. And the Lord Jesus Christ in Matthew 24, he said, as the days of Noah, people were living really married and giving in marriage. And then the flood came upon them. And he said, the coming of the Son of Man at the end will be an acute event, a sudden event, like the flood. So these some pictures of the tsunami in Japan in 2011, and it really was very destructive. And tsunami is when the water and near the coastal line, when there is a drop in the tectonic plates down, the water will gush over the coast and cause massive, massive catastrophe. So during the flood, there were lots of volcanic eruptions and lots of tsunamis all over the world. So some people will say how the ark can survive the tsunami. Actually, if the tsunami happens in the depth of the oceans, the safest place to be is on the surface of water. The danger of tsunami is when the water comes to the coastal line. That's when the damage happens. But if there is a tsunami, if you are in sailing on top of the water, that is the safest place to be. So these are all the creatures outside the ark, and all these volcanic eruptions and all this amount of mud coming their way will kill them, and they will be buried and moved to other places. When they are buried, it is not where they lived, but where they died. So the understanding of the mechanics of the flood is very essential. So what do you expect if there is a universal flood? You find billions of dead creatures, billions of dead things, buried in rock layers, laid down by water all over the earth. And that's exactly what you find in the fossil. You find billions of dead things buried in rock layers, that's sedimentary rocks, laid down by water all over the earth. And this is the record of all the fossils in the world. There are billions of dead things buried in rock layers, laid down by water all over the earth. But the violence of the flood was not equal in all parts of the earth. There were areas which are quiet and areas which are really volcanic. So it's a mixture of all of these things happening together. And the water completely covered the earth, not on day 1, but from day 40 to day 150. It's very interesting to understand these things, because that will allow us to understand what happened in the earth. Today, I was listening to a lecture by somebody from big university in America, from Harvard, denying the flood and talking against it and say it will never happen. But he didn't really understand the text, what the Bible describes as the Noah's flood. He's a professor and he's very high in geology. But really, when I listened to him, I felt he didn't really grasp what the Bible says. And I think in our little group here, we are trying to understand things in a little bit of detail. So it was a complex year of events in ascending phase and retreating phase. That means volcanic eruptions and quiet areas. So, and the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of the 105th days, 50 days, the waters started to abate, to be reduced. And returned continuously, is going and returning, and that's one of the reasons of the layers of the earth. We're going and abating, and it's like the raven when Noah sent the raven. And what happened to the water after the flood? God raised the mountains and reduced the valleys. So when he raised the mountains, the water will shift into the basins of the oceans. And as I said, 70% of the surface of the earth is water. So that's what happened to the water after the flood. Duration is 371 days, and we all now very clear about this. And these are the verses that we studied before. That's the start of the flood when Noah was 600 years in the second month on the 17th day. And it all ended when he was 601 and in the second month and day 27. So this is, as I said, the opening of the replica of the ark that was built in Cincinnati in America. And the opening was on the 4th of July in 2016. And I was there as part of the team here. And these are the number of people. This is exactly, this is a real photo. And these are the big columns of wood forming the three floors of the ark. And obviously there are ramps here to allow for people with special needs and things, because it's an exhibition. But Noah's Ark, this is a model. The Bible doesn't mention all these details, but it's a model. Now, they think that on the third floor, they made it the living quarters of the four families, Noah and his wife, and three sons and their wives. And they made it as a sort of a living, functioning house, if you like. Now, these are the kinds. So it is not animals that we are not familiar with now. They are the head of the family that from which other animals came in. And they intentionally made one of Noah's son's wife as black or dark skin, because in order to have the variety of skin colors in humans, we have to have a mixture of genes that can give the more melanin. Melanin is the product of something called melanocyte, producing the melanin, which gives the color of the skin. So they intentionally made one of the wives of the sons of Noah as dark skin. In the living quarters, this is the picture of Noah, and you can talk to Noah through the computer and ask him about dinosaurs, for example. And you say, oh, dinosaurs, you mean the tennines, because the word dinosaur is a modern word introduced in 1841 by Richard Owens. And the Bible speaks about the tennines in the Old Testament and the dragons. So you can talk to Noah through a computer and he will answer you. These are some of the storage areas. And as I said, they can store lots of fruit and vegetables and dry dates and lots of other things that they can be stored and dried. And they have a sort of a workshop. That's an imagination, obviously. The Bible doesn't mention these things at all. But there are tools. If there is anything that needs to be repaired during this year, they have tools, they have a workshop to be able to do the work that's needed. So this is the light coming from the top. This is a section now of the ark, and the light comes from the top, and they can calculate the dates. So let us see this little video. Because this is the comb, and this is how the light was used. And some people say, okay, if you are talking about the comb at the top, 1 cubit, you remember, how can they have windows? Did they have glass? It's not necessary they have glass, we don't know. But they can have the skin of animals and they can treat it to be very thin So it acts as a transparent window that can be used at the top. This is one of the mechanisms of getting disposal of the wastes of the animals. I'll let you show this video, and it is just using something like wheels, and these wheels can be operated by animals working around it. They don't have electricity or machinery, but they can use the wheels to move the waste and get rid of that. Let us see this. So this is a longitudinal tube, and these are cars and with wheels, and they can come, and these wheels are operated by animal here, and it can take the waste to the outside and bring clean water in. So that is one of the ways of understanding it. We are not saying that exactly what happened, but this is one of the possibilities. Right, so the Lord sent 2 by 2 and 7 by 7, and they entered into the ark. You remember how long that took? It took 1 week. You remember when we studied the events? It started by 1 week of sending the animals, housing the animals in different cages, and then the Lord closed the door. Now, some people say, okay, how he can take dinosaurs inside the ark? How do we know that dinosaurs enter the ark? Dinosaurs are creeping animals. They were created in day 6. And some of them, initially, they were eating herbs. They were not carnivorous. They were not eating meat. After the fall, obviously, some of them became eating meat. Now, there are about 50 kinds of dinosaurs. And because they are not the clean animals, so there are two of each, right? So they will come to the Noah. The dinosaur hatches from a small egg like a football. So God will send the small dinosaurs to enter with Noah. How do we know that dinosaurs enter the ark? Because in the book of Job, we have description of dinosaur in chapter 40, verse 15, when he starts to speak about Behemoth, and he said that his power is in his thighs and in his tummy, and his bones are like the brass. And then he said his tail is like the cedar of Lebanon. So the cedar is a big tree, but sometimes in the commentary books you find it is possibly like an elephant or hippopotamus. The elephant tail is very small, but the tail like cedar tree is like the Brachiosaurus, one of the dinosaurs. So I'd like to finish with this curve. They say, okay, you might be able to get the dinosaurs in, but after a year, they might be so big that they can't come out. We have this curve, a Patrosaurus, which is, this is the age, till they reach the age of 5. Then they have a spurt, they have a high increase, and then they have a steady weight. So it's like the kids, when they come to the puberty, they become tall, and then they keep growing till it becomes steady after that. So dinosaurs is another topic which we'll approach at some stage. But today, really, I wanted to tell you about the ark, how it was built, the size of the ark, how he can accommodate all the animals. So now we studied the flood itself, and we move now to the ark, and that will give us a clear idea. And then we can talk about the covenant of God. That's next time. And that's chapter 9. We'll talk about the covenant of God and dinosaurs in a little bit of detail. Any questions?
Just I have a question here, Doctor.
Yeah.
About the air for breathing for
Yes.
the human or the animals inside the ark.
Yeah.
It's coming from the
Yeah.
windows. And the wind just means the screen of the window was allowing to flowing air inside.
Yeah, as I said, the screens of the window can be opened and closed. So it will allow the air to come in and ventilate the whole thing. And the other thing, Riyadh, they said, do they need an oxygen tank? Because if you go on the top of a mountain, the oxygen concentration decreases and you need sometimes oxygen tank. No, you don't need oxygen tank in the ark, because it is floating on top of all the high hills. So that is the baseline, that's the sea level. And now the ventilation comes from the comb at the top. And the comb is with the length of the ark. So the length of the ark is 300 cubit. So the comb is, say, 200 cubit or something at the top. So it's a massive area to allow massive amount of air to aerate the smell as well of all the animals, and to give them oxygen to breathe. So that's not a problem at all. Yeah.
But if they open the windows, is the water is not going to go inside during
Yes,
the opening.
that's why. That's a good question. Right. Remember, all our houses in the West is like the V, inverted V. That's right. So the water comes in both sides and slips on the side. Okay. And the window is inside protected. And the other thing is, this water coming on the side will come into tunnels to be used for water drinking as well. So they can harbor some of the water. And these windows, as I said, some of them can be open, some is closed, and you can alternate. I'll take you back to the, let me just take you back here, yeah. Right? So this is the window. Okay, you see how big that is? And this is like a V-shaped. So when the water comes from the top, it can slip on the sides and go through tunnels here, bamboo, to give them some water supply, fresh water supply inside the ark. Because the ark is so big and floating, so the rain is coming, hitting from the top, right? So the rain coming here and going down into tunnels through the bamboo. That's the model, as I said. And these windows here, some of them are opened and some are closed. Some are open to allow for air, and others are closed to prevent water coming inside and entering the ark. Is that any clear, Riyadh, or not? You are not convinced?
Good. The V shape is the answer, and Q
Yeah,
for
the V. Yeah.
for the
Yes. The V shape is the answer. That's right. Right. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, regarding the window as well, where like when I read it in the Bible, it doesn't mention how long it is. Like I think I could, or
Yes.
I couldn't understand it. I don't know.
That's right. It didn't mention it, but he said you have it with, you do the windows with a height of 1 cubit. That's all what is mentioned. So in order to be 1 cubit, it is not on the side wall here. It's not like in the cabins. There is only one door on the side, as I said here. But the model that is used based on the description in the Bible is that window is called the comb, which covers the whole ark like this. Look how big that is. Because remember, that's 300 cubit from here to there. So if you just say this is about 200 cubit at least. So it gives a massive amount of air entering in here. And it gives the light, as we said. And you have the windows here covered by, as I said, possibility of skin of animals to prevent the water from coming on the side. But when there is a quiet area, they can open the windows for aeration and light. So that's how they describe the windows in the ark, like this, as a sort of a roof window with all these lengths. Okay, Soha?
I didn't get no يعني أنا مش فاهمة قوي الحتة بتاعت هو ارتفاعه. حضرتك بتتكلم على الارتفاع بتاع الويندو.
Yes,
أنا
yes.
اللي
The
بتكلم
Bible
عليه
says
هم ليه مفترضين إن هو بطوله كله يعني for the whole length؟ ليه ما كانش في حتة معينة؟
Yeah, it could have been. We don't know. The Bible doesn't say anything about it, but we say it is a big window. Let me just read to you about the. Can you read Genesis 6, verse 16, please? Do you have a Bible handy?
Just a minute.
Yeah.
16. وتصنع قوة للفلك. Make a roof. A window shall thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shall thou finish it above. So.
Yes. So he says you have to have تصنع قوة بمقدار ذراع. فاحنا بنقول the height of this, what we call the coom, that's called the coom, right? It is one cubit, that's about half a meter in height. So that's one of the models. You can have different models, right? But all what we are saying here, there is an aeration system, and we think it is long enough to cover the whole thing. But it could be 2/3, it could be half of the length of the ark. We don't know. But he said, you have to make a window, and the height of the window is 1 cubit. Remember, the height of the whole thing is. Yeah, go ahead.
يعني عشان بس ما يتفهمش ان احنا بنقصد شباك طوله 200 متر او 100 متر. هي فتحات اللي بتتسمى الشباك او القوة. فهي فتحات اعتقد وليها ممكن يكون نفسها ليها غطا خشب بيتفتح لبره كده، فالهواء يبقى موجود، لكن الغطا بتاعها نفسه هو اللي بيحميها من انه الميه تدخل. بالظبط زي ما يكون عندك زي باب الجراج كده لما يتفتح بالطريقه دي. فلو اتفتحت كده دخل هواء وفي نفس الوقت حماها. بالاضافه لحاجه تانية انه في الفنتيليشن بتاع المباني وبتاع اي حاجه زي كده، احنا فاهمين انه الهواء السخن هو اللي بيتحرك لفوق. فلما بفتح له فوق هو بيخرج، السخن بيخرج والهواء البارد بيدخل. فدي الطريقه بتاعت تفريغ الهواء من جوه. لكن في نفس الوقت هي مش يعني ممكن تكون مجرد ليها غطا خشب بيتفتح بالمنظر ده كده، وتبقى فتحات مختلفه لانه اكيد مش هيعمل شباك بالطول ده، مش هعرف يفتحه، لكن هيكون متقسم اجزاء يعني عشان بس ما تخيل.
ده انا موافق جدا يا باسم على كل ده، وكل اللي بقوله انه الغطا بقى اللي هو مغطي كل الشبابيك دي كلها اسمه الكوم، لانه في النهايه هو هيرفع الغطا ده. يعني بعد ما يستقر الفلك الرب هيقول له ارفع الغطا ده، فهو يعني في حاجه هيرفع كل الحته دي. الحته دي بقى قد ايه الكتاب مش قايل. But we think it is a big area to allow for air and to allow for light to enter into the ark of the 3 layers here inside. Okay, يا سوها ولا مش مقتنعة؟
لا okay, yeah, كده it makes more sense.
تمام.
Yeah, thank you.
More sense. Good, yeah. Right, any other questions?
Dr. Nagy, regarding the windows, you said that they were made out of animal skins. So how would they be fixed to the ship, to the ark? Like, would they have ropes maybe? And then because when you say that you can open them, it's not like a glass window. It's like if it's a kind of just a skin or a fabric or something like that. So how would you open it and then close it back again?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. Right. These are just assumptions, by the way. The Bible doesn't mention what it is, but I can give you different models. They can have this skin of the animals framed in wood, and the wood will be the window that's opened and closed from the top. There are windows that you can push outside, and the top is fixed to the ceiling.
Yes, I know.
So it allows the water to drop, to drop on the side, and at the same time it allows for air to enter in. So that's one model. I'm not saying that's what the Bible says. The Bible says you have to have a window. That's all. The details of that is not mentioned, but this is in the visibility study, because some people said, okay, Noah doesn't have glass. We don't know if he had or not. So what are the other possibilities? They said they can bring the skin of animals, treat it very well to make it very thin to allow for the light to enter in, and then put it in a frame of wood, and that will be the window. That's a possibility. We are not sure of that, but that's a possibility.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Linda?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question regarding all these explanations. Like, who did this? Like, are they people of the Bible, like theologian or whatever, or they are scientists or both, or like?
Yeah, they are scientists, really. What they did, they had the dimensions of the ark from the Bible, right? And that's all what's mentioned is very little actually about he said you make it 300 cubit by 50 by 30 and make 3 floors and make one door and make the window. That's all, nothing more than that. So there is a chap called Levet, and he is an engineer, mechanical engineer from Australia. And he was teaching in the university on the college for 12 years. And he spent years and years studying the visibility study of Noah's Ark, saying, what could that be in the modern life? How can we understand it? Using the material that was used in the building of the ships in the Greek. And there are more details actually how they connected this wood together and what type of nails they used. They think that the nails they use, they make a hole. If you are connecting 2 pieces of wood, you make a hole and put a nail formed of wood and fill it with water. So the water expand and connect these 2 together. These are all possibilities done by engineers, not by theologians. And there are more and details of that. I'm just trying to give you the big summary. But all of this, we have to differentiate between 2 things. What is inspired by the word of God in the Bible? That is constant, right? These are the dimensions, 300 by 50 by 30. That's fixed. What we are offering as an explanation, this is explanation which is a model which can be changed. What we know is 300 by 50 by 30, there is a window at the top was 1 cubit. There is one door, only one door to the ark. That's all what we know from the Bible. But this model is just a logical explanation of what is mentioned. Okay.
Didn't they find the ark on Ararat?
No, not really. There are lots of people who went to find it, and there is no evidence of Noah's Ark at all. They find some pieces of wood from time to time, and they think it is Noah's Ark. But I spoke to geologists who are really well versed in this and said no. And we don't expect something which is about 4,000 years ago, and it's made of wood, it will decay. So we don't expect to find it really.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Dr. Nagy, if you allow me, there is another question. I didn't get it quite right when you talked about the waste management. How did it go outside, and then there was fresh water from outside come into the ship?
Yes.
And all that situation, I didn't really understand that.
I know. I'll show you the thing again. I don't know where it is now, but I'll try to find it. This is a possibility as well. I think it is after this. I'll get it for you. Right. Let me just say something. When I visited the Ark, and I'm going again in May actually to video it to television company in Arabic, and we will have more details about this part of the waste disposal. Right. In the cages, they have a slope at the bottom. So the animals, by the way, when they are hibernating and in a small place, their metabolic rate will be reduced. So the amount of food they are eating is less, and the amount of waste they are producing is less. But this slope is coming down. I'll just try to get it actually for you so you can understand. So the amount, yes, I think this is the one. Here we are. Right. I'll run it. So look at this wheel working at the top. And these are the layers. This chap here is having a carreta with wheels, and this is full of waste. And it will come here to be thrown in this direction. And then there is a water in these tanks that goes out and get cleaned in the water. And then there is another clean water coming in. And there is here there is a wheel and an animal operating this wheel زي في الحقل كده, right? And there is a wheel at the top. I will get more explanation when I visit again about this disposal thing. But this is a possibility. And all of these things were based on what the old Greek people did in their ships. So I'll get you more detail after May, probably when I come and visit you in June, and explain that a little bit more. But this is what is proposed as the mechanism of getting rid of the waste. But the Bible obviously doesn't mention any of that. Yes, okay. Go ahead.
No, it's just that I was gonna say that I was never good in mechanics or physics or that kind of stuff. So I don't think I get it, but
that's
maybe
fine.
If I watch the video again.
Yeah, look, this man here, one of having this carreta, and he can just throw that in here, and look at these carriages coming up and down. So the one which is full of waste will go down in the water, and then cleaned, and then come up, and then goes down again, and this motor is working at the top, and there is another one at the bottom.
So the yellow flow that we see, that's like the waste going down from pipes?
Yeah, going down in this water. Yes, going down in this water with, I'll just run it again.
So this is like the sea. This is like the flood water, right?
Yeah, it goes to the water at the bottom. Yeah, he's coming here. Look at this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And then he will throw it in here.
Okay.
And this water will go down and be cleansed, and these trucks will come back clean to be filled again, and it goes in again, and the motor working one at the top and one at the bottom. As I said, this is just a model.
Yeah.
It is not what happened. We don't know what happened really,
Mm.
but this is a model. But I'll give you more explanation when we look at it again in detail.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Thank
Thank you, Linda. Right, any other questions? Right, so we will stop here, and next week, God willing, we'll continue talking about dinosaurs, and we talk about the covenant, actually chapter 9. If you have a chance to read chapter 9, that will be helpful. And then we will talk about dinosaurs, and then we talk about the 6 days of creation, and we'll be coming to the end of the course by April. Okay?
Okay, Dr. Nagy, thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you, and please ask the others to come. Joyce didn't come today?
No, it seems
Yeah,
like
for some
she was
reason, yeah.
busy. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we understand people have different commitments. But next week,